We will go to question time, but I think I will immediately invite the Ukrainian delegation. We're very privileged to have you here. The Ukrainian ambassador is here, the delegation is led by Dr. Kalina Mikhailiuk. So you are most welcome in the Australian Senate. And Senator Bragg.
Thank you very much, President. My question is to the Minister representing the Treasurer, Senator Gallagher. Minister, the Treasurer said in February that, and I'm quoting now directly, the pressure on the economy, the upward revision, is because of faster than expected private demand, at the same time as public demand is taking a back seat, actually retreating, end quote. Yesterday's national accounts show the opposite. Public demand grew at more than twice the rate of private demand in the December quarter, just as it did in September. The Treasurer made that claim to justify a rate rise which hurt millions of mortgage holders. The official data contradicts him directly. Will you stand by that claim or admit he was wrong?
Thank you, Senator Bragg. Minister Gallagher.
Thank you, President. I thank Senator Bragg for the question. If you look at the data in annual terms, Senator Bragg, private demand grew faster than public demand, and it has been not only shown in the national accounts, but in other economic data as well. And I would also point out to Senator Bragg, considering that they were going to have deeper deficits and higher debt under their plan for the economy that they took to the election, if we take your concern and apply it to the policies you took to the last election,
Minister Gallagher,
then we would be in a much worse position.
Minister Gallagher, please resume your seat. Senator Bragg.
A point of order on relevance, President. The question was quite clear. Will the government stand by the claim or admit that they were wrong?
Thank you, Senator Bragg. And there was a preamble, and I'll remind the minister to focus on your question, the whole of your question. Minister Gallagher.
Thank you. And of course I support the comments by the Treasurer. And as I have just explained, if you look at the data, not only in the national accounts but in other economic data, and if you look at the contribution to growth that both public and private demand made, which in yesterday's data release was 0.3 for public demand and 0.3 for private demand, in annual growth, contribution to growth, public demand was 0.7 and private demand in annual growth was 2.3. So yes, the Treasurer is correct. And the other point I made, so I've answered the question directly, is, well, I have, Senator Cash, is that based on the economic geniuses of the Leader of the Opposition, the Deputy Leader of the Opposition, the plan that they took to the election last year, which was overwhelmingly rejected, had deeper deficits and higher debt, because if people remember, and higher taxes, as Senator Wong points out, because if people remember, they wanted to borrow to build nuclear power stations. And so under your plan, we would be much worse off.
Has expired. Senator Bragg for a supplementary.
Thank you very much. Public sector demand is—
Order. I do need to hear Senator
very
Bragg's
boisterous over there.
question.
Public sector demand is at an all-time record share of the economy and it is accelerating. The Treasurer said it was retreating. Minister, which is right, the Treasurer or the national accounts?
Thank you, Senator Bragg. Minister Gallagher.
Well, the Treasurer is correct. And the other point that I take about this line of questioning, including the concerns that the opposition— I mean, these are concerns that they didn't have when they were actually in government, but the concerns they have now about wages, which was raised yesterday, and public spending, was that, as you know— well, you weren't too concerned about real wages when you were in government, Senator Hume, but the other concern they have is around public spending, which, as you know, and as is drawn out by the ABS data and identified by ABS, if you don't even want to believe the government, believe the ABS, is that the investment was into defence spending. Defence spending. So now you've added that to your list of things that you don't support, which I find interesting, because that where the contribution was made in Commonwealth public demand, it was in defence spending, which is something that you clearly don't support.
The time for answering has expired. Senator Bragg, second supplementary.
Minister, if the Treasurer can't accurately describe what's happening in this economy, how can Australians have any confidence in this government's economic management, particularly when households are being hit with higher mortgages, higher rents and higher taxes all at the same time?
Thank you, Senator Bragg. Minister.
Well, the Australian community got an opportunity to make a decision about whose economic plan they supported, and they made that choice. And it was about a government that invests in services, essential services, that helps things that you don't support, cost of living help, again, that you don't support, that manages the budget responsibly, that delivers surpluses, that pays down debt, that reduces the deficit. That is what the Australian people voted for. A government of adults, not a group that squabbles and trips over itself to get up to the Sky News interview to bag each other, not for a plan that told everyone, all the women of Australia were bludgers and you weren't allowed to work from home. Oh, but if you didn't work from home and you weren't allowed to work from home, you could work part-time. That was the other gem in that policy announcement. You're not entitled to work full-time, you can work part-time. And they had their judgment and they supported our plan.
Thank you, Minister. Senator O'Neill.
Thank you very much, President. My question is to the Minister for Foreign Affairs, Senator Wong. It's clear the conflict in the Middle East is not likely to end quickly. Iran continues to attack countries in the region and travel disruptions continue. Can the Minister please provide an update on the conflict and how the Albanese Labor government is supporting Australians impacted?
Thank you, Senator O'Neill. Minister Wong.
Thank you, President. I thank Senator O'Neill for her question, and if I may also thank her for her work as one of the conveners of the Parliamentary Friends of Ukraine, and welcome again to the Senate our friends from Ukraine, including Dr Mihailuk. Thank you and your delegation. Thank you for being here. We stand with Ukraine. Iran's reprisal attacks have continued to escalate at a scale and breadth we have not seen before, now attacking 11 countries. The UAE alone has been forced to intercept over 1,000 drones and rockets, and the Iranian regime's intensifying hostile attacks are on countries that have nothing to do with the US and Israeli strikes. Countries in the region are now being forced to defend themselves. Australia supported action that prevented Iran from getting a nuclear weapon and prevented Iran from continuing to threaten international peace and security. It is clear this conflict is now widening. Australia is not participating in US strikes, and we have been clear we are not sending Australian troops into Iran. The first priority of our government is, and always will be, to protect Australians and keep them safe at home and overseas. We have 115,000 Australians in the Middle East, 24,000 in the UAE. As we have said, we have been working on contingencies to help Australians keep Australians safe and get travellers home. We have sent DFAT's personnel to the region as part of crisis response teams. They are on the ground providing medical and consular support. We have already deployed military assets as part of our contingency planning earlier this week. We will continue looking at all options we have available to us, engaging partners and taking action to support efforts to keep Australians safe. I regret the conflict is likely to get worse before it gets better, and we call on all parties to uphold international humanitarian law and to protect civilian life. Our hope is that we will see in the near term a return to dialogue and diplomacy.
Thank you, Minister. Senator O'Neill, first supplementary.
Thank you very much, President. Many of us were emotional to see those images last night of Australians returning home. It's clear that the Albanese Labor government's top priorities are keeping Australians safe and working to help Australians who need it. What is the government doing to support Australians in the region?
Thank you, Senator O'Neill. Minister Wong.
Thank you, Senator O'Neill, and you're correct. I think so many of us were moved by the images of more than 200 Australians greeting loved ones in Sydney. I can confirm that another flight left Dubai this morning with hundreds of Australians on board. At this stage, another 2 flights are scheduled to depart for Australia today, only if conditions permit. We understand that the UAE and airlines are working hard to put on flights out of the region. They also need to make sure, of course, that flights can safely depart. Obviously, the situation is enormously difficult while the region is under attack by the Iranian regime. However, commercial flights continue to be the fastest way to help the Australians leave the Middle East at scale. There are many more thousands of Australians waiting for flights to come home. This will continue to be a challenging time for many Australians, and travel disruptions could persist for some time.
Thank you, Minister. Senator O'Neill, second supplementary.
Minister Wong, you have said throughout the week that travel disruptions could go on for some time as the conflict continues. Could you please provide an update on what else the Albanese Labor government is doing, particularly by engaging with international partners to help support Australians?
Thank you, Senator O'Neill. Minister Wong.
As Senator O'Neill says, our government's first priority is keeping Australians safe, and we are working around the clock to help Australians who need it. I am in touch with our partners in the region to engage on efforts to support Australians impacted by travel disruption. Yesterday, the Prime Minister and I spoke with counterparts in the UAE, and last night I spoke to my counterparts in Jordan and Israel to discuss Iran's escalating reprisal attacks and to engage on efforts to support Australians impacted by travel disruptions. Earlier this morning, I spoke jointly to my counterparts from the United Kingdom and Canada. We agreed to coordinate closely, as we always have, on support for our citizens in the region. We continue to do all we can to support Australians impacted by travel disruptions.
Thank you, Minister Wong. Senator Duniam.
Thank you, President. My question is to the Minister representing the Minister for Home Affairs, Senator Watt. Recent reports tell of a Lebanese man who was convicted of inappropriately touching a 15-year-old girl in Australia has won the right to remain in the country. Lucien Daher's visa was cancelled by the government but was overturned last week by the Administrative Review Tribunal. What actions is the Minister taking now to ensure Mr Daher's visa is cancelled and a message is sent to all visa holders that you cannot come here and expect to stay if you commit sexual crimes against children?
Thank you, Senator Duniam. Minister Watt.
Thank you, President, and thank you, Senator Duniam, for the question. I don't have any specifics on that particular case, but I'll see what I can make available either during or after question time. I'll obviously also need to consider what information can be provided publicly about an individual. You would be aware that we don't normally comment publicly on individual cases. But as Senator Duniam and I'm sure the whole chamber would be aware, this government has taken action in relation to previous practices and decisions of the AAT, as it was then known, to overturn cancellations of visas. When those visas have been cancelled by ministers or departmental officials, the government took action, I think it was at least 12 months ago, to put in place a new ministerial direction that altered the circumstances that should be taken into account by the now ART when it's making these sorts of decisions, and has opened up opportunities for ministers to take action if the situation requires it. So, as I say, that's a sort of a general statement on these sort of matters. If there is anything that I can provide you on the specifics, I'll come back to you as quickly as I can.
Thank you, Minister. Senator Duniam, first supplementary.
Thanks, President. The 15-year-old girl who was victim of this crime has said that she's been left feeling scared, worried and worthless after Mr Daher's repeated crimes against her. Will the Minister for Home Affairs personally intervene under Section 501 of the Migration Act to cancel this visa in the interests of Australians?
Thank you, Senator Duniam. Minister Watt.
Thanks, Senator Duniam. As follows from my first answer, again, whatever information I can put on the record, I will do so as quickly as I can. Again, I would make the point that this government has a very strong track record when it comes to the cancellation of visas. We all remember in the last term, when our old friend Mr Dutton was still the Leader of the Opposition, it turned out that for all the attacks that Mr Dutton and the Opposition undertook against this government regarding visa cancellations, in fact our government has cancelled significantly more visas than ever occurred when Mr Dutton was the Minister for Home Affairs. Now I know for many of you, Mr Peter Dutton are three words that you'd rather forget and not ever be mentioned again. But the reality is that this government has had a stronger record on visa cancellations than occurred under the coalition when they had the opportunity to take action.
Thank you. Order. I'm waiting for order. Senator Duniam, second supplementary.
Thank you. My final question on this serious issue. Mr Daher was sentenced to a 2-year community correction order and fined for a crime that has left a young girl living in fear. How does the government reconcile this decision with its stated commitment to prioritising the safety of Australian children and the broader community?
Thank you, Senator Duniam. Minister Watt.
Again, Senator Duniam is seeking specifics, which I will answer if I can. It is worth remembering also that any case before the ART concerning a cancelled visa by necessity involves a decision made by a minister or department to cancel that visa. So without knowing the specifics of this individual case, what must have occurred is that a decision was made either by the minister or the department to cancel this individual's visa, demonstrating the view that the minister or the department had about that case. That was obviously then overturned by the ART. As I say, I will bring back any information that I can about that case particularly. But to reinforce the point that I've made, under this government in 2024-25, 85 visas were cancelled by ministers compared to 20 in the year 2020-21.
Thank you, Minister. Senator Shoebridge.
Thanks very much, President. My question is to the Minister representing the Prime Minister, Minister Wong. Minister, this morning a US attack-class nuclear submarine fired a torpedo and sank an Iranian frigate in international waters off the coast of Sri Lanka. The most recent data from your government says there were between 50 to 100 Australian personnel currently embedded on US nuclear-powered attack submarines in the region. Were any Australian personnel on this US submarine when it sank the Iranian frigate and left the survivors to drown?
Thank you, Senator Shoebridge. Minister Watt. Minister Wong, sorry.
Thank you, President. Thank you, Senator Shoebridge. I have seen those reports, and I've also seen, before I came to question time, what the US has said about why that vessel was sunk and what it was preparing to strike, and I'd refer you to that. The US submarine operations are a matter for the United States. You ask about Australian Defence Force personnel. As I have told you before in a number of other contexts, for operational and security reasons, we do not disclose specific information regarding Australian personnel.
Thank you, Minister. Senator Shoebridge, first supplementary.
Thank you, President. No answer. On Monday morning, 2 American P-8 Poseidon reconnaissance planes flew from the US military base in Diego Garcia, a main base for US operations.
Senator Shoebridge, please resume your seat until I get order. You have the right to be heard in silence. Please. Yes, I'll start the question again, Senator Shoebridge, and I expect Senator Shoebridge to be heard in silence. Senator Shoebridge.
Thank you, President. On Monday morning, 2 American P-8A Poseidon reconnaissance planes flew from the US military base in Diego Garcia, a main base for US operations in their illegal war against Iran, flew to RAAF Pierce Base just outside of Perth. Were these planes used in the bombing of Iran, and will your government take the same steps as the Spanish government, which actually has some ticker, and prohibit the US from using their bases to conduct the war in Iran?
Thank you, Senator Shoebridge. Minister Wong.
A few points. Obviously, in relation to Diego Garcia, I would refer you to Prime Minister Starmer's and the United Kingdom government's statements about the use of that base. Second, in relation to the aircraft or US aircraft that you reference, I would say as a general proposition, and I know the Greens political party do not agree with this, but US aircraft have been visiting Australia for decades, undertaking a range of activities and tasks. This is a long-standing feature of our cooperation with the United States, and it occurs in accordance with well-understood policies and procedures, and with, if I may, with full respect for Australian sovereignty. So that is our response in relation to that. I've already made clear, as has the Prime Minister, that Australia did not participate in the strikes on Iran.
Thank you. Order. Sorry, Senator Shoebridge, just resume your seat, please. I made sure that Senator Shoebridge was able to ask his question in complete silence, and that is what I expect when his second question is asked and when the minister gets up to respond. Senator Shoebridge.
Minister, it's clear that your government's commitment to AUKUS has denied our country the ability to make independent foreign policy decisions. The Canadian Prime Minister asked today, will middle powers come together to stand up for collective values, or will we let the hegemons dictate outcomes? Well, Minister, will your government let the US decide our policy, or will you cancel AUKUS?
Order. I'm not order. I'm waiting to call the minister, and there needs to be silence. Minister Wong.
I'd make a few points, if I may, Senator Shoebridge. The first is the question of sovereignty. Unlike you, we do not believe that sovereignty means isolation. What it does mean is that Australian governments can make their decisions about what Australia does or does not do. And I would refer you, and I assume because you do look at these matters, to the various statements that the Deputy Prime Minister has made, including in the House. My recollection is a ministerial statement or similar, where he outlines the way in which the sovereignty arrangements have been updated for us, for the country, in relation to AUKUS, but built on the existing sovereignty arrangements which exist. So I disagree with you on the basic premise of your question, which I think sets up a false binary that says you can't have an alliance and be a sovereign nation. Actually, what alliances are about are protecting your sovereignty, because it is about making sure
thank you, Minister.
that you can
the time for
deter
answering has expired. Senator Shoebridge, second supplementary.
Minister, the question was clear. Acknowledging the very real impact of sovereignty on Australia. With US nuclear submarines stationed here, we build the bases for them. $8 billion of Australian public money building the bases for US nuclear submarines. How do you match our utter dependence on the United States, on personnel, on procurement, our inability to stand up with an illegal war? How do you really match our utter dependence as a vassal with any kind of independent sovereignty?
Senator Shoebridge, the time for asking the question has expired. Minister Wong.
Thank you, President. What this government always seeks to do is how we ensure the safety and security of Australians and of this country. And unlike you, we don't believe that that is lessened through an alliance. And in fact, we recognise the benefit that the alliance can bring, recognising that we always have to have it within an appropriate sovereignty framework. I mean, you have so many examples, including from the country represented today in the chamber, of what can happen if deterrence is insufficient. We will invest in deterrence, because to keep the peace, you need also to have strong deterrence. And deterrence is part of ensuring peace and stability, and that is what we seek to do.
Thank you, Minister. Senator Marielle Smith.
Thank you, President. My question is to the Minister for Finance, Senator Gallagher. The Albanese Labor government is focused on growing the economy, repairing the budget and delivering practical support for Australians, all while continuing to invest in essential services and long-term national priorities. Can the minister explain how responsible economic management is enabling the government to deliver on the commitments made to the Australian people?
Thank you, Senator Smith. Minister Gallagher.
Thank you, and I thank Senator Smith for the question and for all the work she does across government and for the good people of South Australia and representing them, and the advocacy she provides in cost of living support and in the economic debate. So thank you very much. It's an important question. When it comes to economic management, how we manage the budget and how we deliver on our commitments are all interlinked. When we came to government, one of our first priorities was to get the budget in much better shape, and we have done that. The budget is $233 billion better off cumulatively over 7 years to 28-29 than the budget we inherited. There's also $176 billion lower debt than was forecast prior to the 2022 election. and we are saving the nation around $60 billion in expected interest costs based on those forecasts. So that was the first bit, to try and get the budget in better shape. We've delivered 2 surpluses and we've lowered the deficits, and that work continues. We've been finding savings, repairing the budget over time. What that has allowed, President, is for us to focus on those commitments we made to the Australian people in the first term, looking at how we get wages moving again, looking at how we address all of the failures of the health system, particularly with Medicare, due to the failure to invest from those opposite, how we deal with the investment in defence that we need, again through neglect from those opposite, who announced a lot of defence programs but never actually found the money to underpin and pay for those programs. And so the work that the Deputy Prime Minister did to get the defence program back on track with extra investment, billions of dollars extra, to make sure that our national security is not compromised. We also looked at education.
Thank you, Minister. The time for answering has expired. Senator Smith's first supplementary.
Thank you, President. The Albanese Labor government is delivering practical support through investments across health, housing and education. Can the minister explain why protecting investment in essential services is so important, and what the consequences would be for Australians if those services weren't available?
Thank you, Senator Smith. Minister Gallagher.
Thank you, President. I thank Senator Smith for the question. Well, when those opposite complain about the spending that occurs from the Commonwealth budget, and I hear it repeatedly, what they are criticising is increases to the age pension, cheaper childcare for families, which we know that they are against, the pay rise for early childhood educators, our cheaper medicines. We saw them vote against that in this place. Record investment in public hospitals, funding for new medicines in the PBS, expanding PPL and paying super on PPL, expanding access to training, including free TAFE. We know in relation to PRAC payments now in those areas for nursing, teaching and social work students, and wiping billions of dollars from student debts. They're opposed to our housing agenda. All of this, those opposites see as wasteful. We see it as funding essential services.
Thank you, Minister. Senator Smith's second supplementary.
Thank you, President. Minister, budget choices reflect values, particularly when it comes to essential services and cost of living support. Can the minister outline how these investments are supporting Australians and what Australians would lose if a different approach was taken?
Thank you, Senator Smith. Minister Gallagher.
Thank you, President, and I thank Senator Smith for the question, and I can, because 2 days before the last election, when Mr Taylor and Senator Hume snuck out the coalition's costings, we saw what they were going to cut, and we see them opposing spending now. They would have cut the 3-day guarantee for parents. They would have cut 41,000 frontline workers across the public service. They would have cut student debt relief. They would have cut free TAFE. They would have cut Commonwealth PRAC payment. They would have cut cheaper home batteries. They would have cut 5% deposits. They would have cut the Help to Buy program, the Build to Rent program, the National Reconstruction Fund, the Housing Australia Future Fund. They would have cut production tax credits, and they would cut infrastructure spending. And to top that all off, they were going to repeal the tax cuts. They went to the last election saying they wanted people to pay higher taxes with bigger deficits and more debt. It was quite the achievement, and we will continue to deliver for the Australian people.
Order across the chamber. Order. I'm still waiting for order. We have moved on. Senator Thorpe.
Thank you. My question is for the Minister representing the Minister for Defence, Minister Wong. As part of AUKUS arrangements, you are planning to host US nuclear-capable long-range supersonic B-52 bombers at RAAF Tyndall in the NT, as well as US Virginia-class submarines at HMAS Sterling in WA. Like the B-52s, these submarines could become nuclear-capable as well as nuclear-fuelled in the near future. In its national platform, Labor recognises that nuclear weapons pose significant risks to this country. Given this, will you require the US to declare whether any of their visiting platforms are carrying nuclear weapons?
Thank you, Senator Thorpe. Minister Wong.
Thank you, President. Thank you to Senator Thorpe for the question. She references our platform and our consistent position over many years about the importance of non-proliferation, and we have been strong advocates for both nuclear and non-nuclear states to comply with their obligations under the Non-Proliferation Treaty. We've also been advocates for the Comprehensive Test Ban Treaty coming into force and are a friend of that. In relation to the submarines that you describe, obviously the US is well aware of Australia's position, and whilst the submarines are obviously US submarines, we can't comment for them. The US is aware of Australia's position. I would emphasise AUKUS, which you started with, is for the provision of nuclear-powered submarines, not nuclear-armed submarines. And it is very important. There are some, I'm not suggesting you are, Senator Thorpe, but there are some other countries who have sought to blur that distinction as part of their anti-AUKUS position. And we have been very clear, Australia never seeks and will not seek to be nuclear-armed.
Thank you, Minister. Senator Thorpe, first supplementary.
Thank you. If the government will not require transparency regarding the presence of nuclear weapons in this country, do you therefore accept that nuclear weapons could be launched by planes or submarines being based or hosted by Australia?
Thank you, Senator Thorpe. Minister Wong.
Australia does not seek to be nuclear armed. Full stop. We don't.
Thank you, Minister. Senator Thorpe, second supplementary.
In the 80s, Malcolm Fraser required foreign military forces, including visiting US aircraft, to be unarmed and carry no bombs, meaning nuclear bombs. This request was complied with. Given Labor's supposed opposition to nuclear weapons, would you consider requesting the same?
Thank you, Senator Thorpe. Minister Wong.
Again, Senator Thorpe, what I would say is the United States and all parties are aware of Australia's position in relation to nuclear weapons.
Thank you, Minister. Senator Mackenzie.
Thank you. My question is to the Minister representing the Treasurer, Senator Gallagher. Industry stakeholders estimate that cost blowouts linked to the CFMEU conduct on construction sites can be as much as 30%. The CFMEU's involvement on Victoria's big build has been conservatively estimated as costing the Victorian taxpayer $15 billion. Minister, with billions of Commonwealth taxpayer dollars being allocated for infrastructure projects right across Australia, has the government quantified the cost impact of CFMEU-driven practices on federally funded infrastructure projects?
Thank you, Senator Mackenzie. Minister Gallagher.
Thank you, and I thank Senator Mackenzie for the question. I think it probably falls more appropriately within the Minister for Infrastructure's portfolio, but I can be as helpful as I can. We have seen the numbers that have been circulated in public. They're not numbers that I'm aware of, the basis for them. But I can confirm that Minister King has written to her state and territory counterparts on multiple occasions, reinforcing obligations under the Federation Funding Agreement schedule on land transport infrastructure projects and the need to report instances of suspected criminal behaviour or corruption to the relevant regulator and the department. Minister King has also written, where appropriate, to government business enterprises involved in the delivery of Commonwealth-led infrastructure projects, outlining expectations that all instances of suspected criminal behaviour or corruption are reported to the relevant regulator and/or department. We've also sought assurance that procurement—
Minister Gallagher, please resume your seat. Senator Mackenzie.
Just a point of order on relevance. I wrote to the Minister King about this issue 18 months ago, and so I understand it.
Senator McKenzie, writing to Minister King is not relevant.
The question was to quantify the cost impact for Commonwealth-funded infrastructure projects, not on the correspondence register of Minister King.
I have advised many senators on many occasions before that when you call a point of order, it's not about giving a statement. It is just drawing my attention to a point of order around a question. The minister is being relevant to your question. Minister Gallagher.
Thank you, President. Well, as I said at the outset, the numbers that were cited by Senator McKenzie's numbers are not numbers that, Commonwealth numbers, or ones that we are aware of. The basis for that. So my answer is reinforcing the action that has been taken to make sure that federal funds, where they are used on infrastructure projects that are managed by the states, the Commonwealth has consistently sent the message and reminded ministers and others about the requirements for any concerns relating to conduct or allegations of criminal activity to be reported to the regulator.
Thank you, Minister. Senator McKenzie, first supplementary.
At a time when inflation remains persistently high and Australians are suffering a cost of living crisis, public sector demand is now at an all-time record share of the economy. Why isn't the government doing more to ensure that taxpayer-funded construction projects are delivered free from coercive or inflationary practices so that public spending is not adding further pressure to prices?
Thank you, Senator McKenzie. Minister Gallagher.
Thank you. We've made it very clear where it involves Commonwealth funding that projects are appropriately scoped and costed before the Commonwealth partners and provides project funding, and that the project agreement clearly sets out the expectations of the Commonwealth. And where and if people have concerns, for example, if you have concerns, Senator McKenzie, about particular projects, then it's up to you to make those concerns clear, and the Commonwealth would look in. Well, the Commonwealth, not just raising a question. No.
Minister, please resume your seat. Senator McKenzie and Senator Hume, stop interjecting. I can't be any plainer than that. Stop. Minister, please continue.
And the Commonwealth is fulfilling our responsibilities to make sure, one, that projects are appropriately scoped, and where funding is provided, and when we are satisfied that those business cases and the work that's been done scopes the project out correctly, we provide funding, and then there is a funding agreement which must be adhered to by the relevant entity.
Senator McKenzie, second supplementary.
Which doesn't mention the CFMEU. Minister, have you personally ever benefited from a donation, actual or in kind, sponsorship or patronage from the CFMEU?
Minister Gallagher.
Yeah, that's about a personal donation.
Senator, excuse me, I have Senator Wong on her feet. I expect the chamber to come to order.
Point of order, President. That, in my submission, is not supplementary to the primary that was asked.
Yes, and I have checked with the clerk, and his view is it is not related to the primary or the first question. And I will invite Senator McKenzie. I believe that I am speaking. I will invite Minister Gallagher to answer the question in whatever way she thinks.
The only advice I can provide there, noting that it's not linked to the earlier questions, is that all donations provided to the Labor Party are disclosed in accordance with disclosure guidelines or disclosure laws.
Thank you, Senator Hanson.
Thank you very much. My question is to the Minister representing the Prime Minister, Senator Wong. Minister, as the conflict involving Iran drives oil prices higher amid an effective blockade of the Strait of Hormuz, Australians are already paying more at the Bowser and in the supermarket. Official analysis released under the Albanese government has highlighted that Australia's fuel reserves are dangerously low by international standards, with roughly 26 days of petrol, 25 days of diesel and 20 days of aviation fuel onshore. far short of what serious crisis would demand. Yet this week the Energy Minister, Chris Bowen, told Australians, quote, "We have a good stock of petrol in reserve." Can the Prime Minister advise who is telling the truth, the government's own fuel security experts or the most incompetent Energy Minister we have ever had, Minister Bowen?
Senator Hanson. Senator Hanson, that is a personal reflection on a minister. Please withdraw.
Well, I withdraw.
Thank you. Minister Wong.
First, I'd make the point, Senator, that in fact Australia is now holding more stocks of aviation fuel, petrol and diesel on land and in ports in Australia than at any time in the last 15 years. So I know that you have a view that you need to attack the Labor government, but I note you were very quiet about this, if I may say, when the coalition was in government, because we actually have. Well, if I'm wrong, I'm happy to hear. I'm happy to hear you. I'm happy to hear you if I'm wrong on that. But I don't recall this being something that you attacked Mr Taylor about when he was the Energy Minister. And I'd again say Australia is fuel secure. We hold more stocks of aviation fuel, petrol and diesel on land and in ports in Australia than at any time in the last 15 years. But Senator Hanson does.
I'm sorry, Minister Wong. The interjections across the chamber are incredibly disorderly, and I'm asking you all to stop. Minister Wong, please continue.
Thank you. But the senator does raise an important issue, which is that one of the consequences or one of the risks associated with this conflict is the conflict in the Middle East, which has implications, one, because of the transit of oil through the Strait of Hormuz, but also because of the impact on economic and financial markets, global markets for fuel, which reacting not only to that risk but also the Iranian targeting of hydrocarbon infrastructure in the region. And you're right, that is a challenge, and the government is very, very aware of that, and we are very aware that these developments have added to the uncertainty in the global economy. I'd make a few points. We have established an Australian domestic fuel reserve. We are finalising a gas reservation. We are closely monitoring developments in the Middle East, including fuel impacts, and we've secured more affordable gas for Australians.
Thank you, Minister. Senator Hanson, first supplementary.
Minister, according to a government liquid fuel security review, diesel is the fuel we have the lowest capacity to produce domestically. Given your government has left Australia with only 25 days of diesel, how can the Prime Minister keep backing Minister Bowen's claim about good fuel stocks when your own fuel security experts warn defence, food supply, hospitals and emergency services are at risk if the ships stop coming?
Thank you, Senator Hanson. Minister Wong.
Thank you. Senator Hanson, I'd again say to you that in relation to how much of our stockholding obligations we have compared to the minimum obligation, so what we are required to hold and what we hold, diesel is at the advice to me is 116% of those holding obligations. But we are not. We understand the potential risk to the global economy and markets for energy that this conflict has in place. This conflict is causing, and so, of course, we will continue to take action. This includes the ACCC being asked for assistance in terms of avoiding the price gouging of consumers, and we also, as you know, have put in place coal and gas price caps and have established domestic fuel reserves for diesel, petrol and jet fuel in Australia.
Thank you, Minister. Senator Hanson, second supplementary.
Under international arrangements, it was 90 days fuel supplies were supposed to have. It was your government that changed it, so you've lowered the standard. Minister, will the Prime Minister admit Labor's reckless net-zero energy policy has left Australia incapable of fulfilling its own fuel security needs in the event of a crisis and abandon their destructive ideological obsession with net-zero? I must also say that under Labor, you actually got rid of 3 fuel refineries.
Minister Wong.
Actually, Senator, my recollection is actually 4 out of 6 closed under the coalition. I think that's why Senator Ayres pointed that out yesterday. But you see, this is the problem, Senator. The advice to me is, as I've said, we hold more fuel than at any time in the past 15 years. But in your desire to attack the Labor government, you forgive the sins of Mr Taylor, but you attack the Labor government. Now, that's fine if you wish to do that, but I think it demonstrates where your political allegiances really lie.
Senator Mulholland.
My question is to the Minister representing the Minister for Climate Change and Energy, Senator Ayres. The conflict in the Middle East has disrupted oil and gas exports. This includes halting traffic through the Strait of Hormuz, which accounts for more than 20% of global oil and gas trade. Minister, to what extent is Australia exposed to international energy market disruption? And can the Minister confirm that Australia's fuel supply is secure?
Thank you, Senator Mulholland. Minister Ayres.
Well, President, thank you to Senator Mulholland for that question in relation to international oil markets and fuel security. I can say that this government has made sure that Australia is more fuel secure than it has been in a generation. This government, after the previous government and Mr Taylor and Mr Morrison's joint leadership of the energy portfolio in secret, utterly failed to manage our obligations to keep Australians fuel secure. We implemented the minimum stockholding obligation, which the previous never. But you never implemented it, Senator Patterson. It was words, but you never implemented it. And as a result of that, we have 1.5 billion litres of petrol on hand and 3 billion litres of diesel in our minimum stock obligation. In effect, a strategic reserve. Now, I understand why the coalition is so sensitive about this proposition and why they join with One Nation to go around trying to frighten little old ladies about it, because they try and profit from conflict and profit from trying to create a sense of crisis when they never did anything themselves. And the person most responsible for never doing nothing, was Mr Taylor, the member for Hume, who is now their leader. So I'm not as posh as you, Senator McGrath. I just said it the way I want to say it. He never did nothing. He put our fuel reserve in Texas. That was his contribution to Australia's fuel security, a made-up fuel reserve, maybe in El Paso, I don't know, but somewhere in Texas.
Senator Mulholland, first supplementary.
One of the key drivers of Australian petrol prices is the international oil price. Minister, what is the expected impact on petrol prices of more expensive oil from the current conflict? And what is the Albanese Labor government doing to prevent price gouging by petrol retailers?
Thank you, Senator Mulholland. Minister Ayres.
Well, I'll try. What we did, Senator Canavan, was implemented the minimum stockholding obligation. We delivered a national fuel reserve. You never did nothing. All talk, no action. That's the problem. Silent, utterly silent over the course of the Abbott, Turnbull, Morrison government, where nothing ever happened. We went backwards in fuel security terms under your government, and Mr Taylor, more responsible than any other person for that utter failure of policy action and leaving Australia weaker, with no reservation strategy, with no strategy on gas, no strategy on fuel, no strategy on diesel, and yet there you are trying to defend the indefensible. Sorry,
Senator Cash.
Ayres almost took my point of order for me. Point of order, Madam Chair. As much as I think we're all enjoying Senator Ayres' therapeutic performance, could he please direct his comments through you, the Chair, as opposed to actually conducting a dialogue?
Thank you. And whilst on a similar point, if members on my right can also stop interjecting. Minister Ayres. Minister Ayres, please continue and direct your comments to me.
Well, in the 7 seconds that remain to me, President, I certainly will do that. We are very focused, directing the ACCC to focus on price gouging.
Thank you, Minister.
I'm sure I'll get another chance in a moment.
Senator Mulholland. Sorry, Senator Mulholland. Senator Canavan, when you're quite finished, particulars, I've asked you to be quiet. Senator Mulholland, second supplementary.
President, these are indeed uncertain international times, and many Australians are looking to the government for information. Minister, why is it important for the government to clearly communicate the facts? And what risks does fear-mongering pose to the Australian community, of which we heard a little bit before?
Minister Ayres. I called you Minister Ayres, sorry.
Thank you. Well, President, I thank the senator for her question. Of course, at this time it underscores why a strategy and action and implementation in relation to fuel reserves and minimum stock holdings is absolutely important. And you can see what's happening in international markets, where international leaders are moving to reassure customers and companies and countries about their fuel obligations and what is going on in a very difficult environment where Iran has attacked, as the Foreign Minister indicated earlier, 11 countries in that region. And that does have knock-on effects. And it does mean that there is a dividend that we need to concentrate on now that is delivered by firm action. President Trump, for example, is out there offering assurances in relation to these issues. But what we see is something very different from One Nation and the Liberals and Nationals.
Has expired. Senator Ruston.
Thank you, President. My question is to the Minister representing the Minister for Health, Senator McAllister. Yesterday I tabled a petition signed by more than 27,000 people on the government's calling on the government to honour its bipartisan commitment to establish proton beam therapy in Australia. Proton therapy is a life-saving cancer treatment, yet right now Australians, including children and their families, are being forced to travel overseas to access the treatment or go without it altogether. Despite this, the government's response to the tabling of the petition was to simply say that it is waiting for the states to come back with a plan. Minister, can you explain why the Albanese government is simply waiting for the states to have a plan instead of leading the charge to ensure this life-saving treatment is available to Australians as promised?
Thank you, Senator Ruston. Minister McAllister.
Well, thank you, President. And indeed, I am pleased to hear from Senator Ruston this week. I think it's probably the last coalition question for the week, and Senator Ruston has finally been allocated one. So, indeed, I am pleased.
Order.
But a question about health, an important
Senator
question
McAllister,
about health.
resume your seat. Order on my order across the chamber. I need to be able to hear the minister. Minister McAllister.
Thank you, Senator Ruston. And indeed, it's a significant issue, and I recognise the impact that the delay in establishing proton beam therapy in Australia is having on patients. I think you will know, Senator Ruston, that in 2017, the former Commonwealth government, I think that you were part of that government, Senator Ruston, announced $68 million to support establishment of Australia's first proton beam therapy at the South Australian Health and Medical Research Institute in Adelaide. And that funding was provided to the South Australian government under a Federation funding agreement schedule, and they in turn passed on the funds to the institute. The Australian government isn't party to a contract or agreement for the specific project, and there have been delays in the project. The Commonwealth is working closely with the South Australian government around the future of the project, and that includes the recent work that's been undertaken by the South Australian government to explore alternative technology suppliers. Patients who do wish to access proton beam therapy in the meantime can make an application through the Medical Treatment Overseas program. Can make application through that program. I'd conclude my answer, Senator Ruston, by simply saying that we do recognise that this is an important therapy, and we do also recognise the delay in the project in South Australia, the consequences that that is having for patients.
Thank you, Minister. Senator Ruston, first supplementary.
Thank you. 2-year-old Layla Davis needed proton therapy, but the Albanese government declined her family's request for support to travel overseas for treatment. Her family has been left devastated because they simply can't afford the high cost to fund the travel and treatment themselves. Minister, how many Australian children have been refused support by your government to access proton therapy overseas?
Thank you, Senator Ruston. Minister McAllister.
Thanks very much, President, and thank you, Senator Ruston. I don't have that information with me. I'm not briefed on that. If I have information I can provide to you, I will.
Senator Ruston, second supplementary.
Minister, cancer patients, particularly young children, do not have the luxury of waiting. The Australian Bragg Centre for Proton Therapy and Research was built in Adelaide specifically to deliver this treatment, yet it currently sits empty of the technology it was designed to house. Minister, when does the Albanese government expect to receive a plan from the South Australian Malinowskis government to deliver proton therapy at the Bragg Centre? Because it seems to me they've had plenty of time to get one.
Thank you, Senator Ruston. Minister McAllister.
Thank you, President. I think Minister Butler has made clear that given the level of capital, physical capital and human capital, as you refer to, Senator, that has been sunk in South Australia, it has been important to give South Australia the opportunity to demonstrate if they have a viable alternative to the contract, the original contract. But as Minister Butler has made clear, at some point the Commonwealth will ask other jurisdictions whether they have a proposal. What is clear is that wherever the proton therapy unit is located, it will be a national capability. And the very clear advice that the Minister has received from Cancer Australia is that the demand projections over the next several years will require one unit across the country, and whether that is in Adelaide or Sydney or somewhere else, patients, particularly paediatric patients, you may wish to listen with cancer from the entire country would fly to receive the treatment.
Senator Walker.
Thank you, President. My question is to the Minister representing the Minister for Skills and Training, Senator Watt. When the Albanese government took office, Australia was facing the worst skills shortage in more than half a century. This was having a massive impact on our national priorities of building more homes and more renewable energy projects. A key focus since then has been on increasing apprentice numbers so our country can meet the challenges of the future. How many Australians have signed up for an apprenticeship under the key apprenticeship program? Are there any risks to this program?
Thank you, Senator Walker. Minister Watt.
Thanks, President, and thanks, Senator Walker, who has already demonstrated what a strong voice for younger Australians she has been as a Senator for South Australia. After a decade of neglect from the Liberals, Australia had the second worst skills shortage in all advanced economies. Since coming to office, the Albanese Labor government hasn't wasted a day in helping Australians to get the skills they want for the jobs we need to fill. That's why we introduced the Key Apprenticeship program, which pays $10,000 in incentives to new apprentices in the housing and clean energy sectors. Nearly 30,000 Australians have signed up for apprenticeships under the program, and these are the chippies, plumbers, brickies and sparkies we need to build Australian homes and deliver the clean energy transition. And what we learned over the weekend is that this key program, which is helping provide the tradies needed to build the homes our country needs, is one the Coalition want to cut. In her first contribution as the new Shadow Minister for Skills and Training, Senator Damper-Jimper-Price told Josh Martin from Channel 7 that the opposition would scrap this vital scheme. They want to scrap the program that is training Australians to become tradies. It seems...
Minister what? Senator Damper-Jimper-Price.
Point of order, President. The minister is misleading the Senate. It is simply untrue.
Senator, that isn't.
He's lying once more.
Senator, that isn't a point of order. Minister Wong.
The Shadow Minister to withdraw what she just said
sorry,
at the conclusion of her point of order. You can't say that
here, but I will ask the Senator Damper-Jimper-Price. Senators, stop arguing back and forth across the chamber. Yeah.
Don't.
Thank you. You've asked for a withdrawal. I'll ask the senator. Senator Nampijinga-Price, there was a lot of noise on my right, and I didn't hear, but I'm sure if there was something that that you said that was unparliamentary, that you would withdraw. The clerks advised me you should withdraw.
I withdraw.
Thank you. Senator Watt, please continue.
It does seem that Senator Nampijinga-Price is another of the coalition members who hasn't yet read the Liberal Party's secret review, which I tabled here on Tuesday. Recommendation 6 of the secret review states that the federal parliamentary party, which has the privilege of determining the party's federal policies, must in future, and especially in opposition, consult with the party organisation on the formulation of policy and do so in a timely manner. It is clear that there was a significant breakdown in the required consultation process to the detriment of the 2025 campaign. The parliamentary leader needs to account for the development of sound policy to the party. So the question is, did the opposition leader know about this new coalition policy to scrap this key program, or was this more freelancing from Senator Nampijinga-Price, just like her support for making Australia great again in the election campaign that went so well?
Senator Watt. Senator Walker, first supplementary.
While there is no doubt that signing Australian tradies up to apprenticeships is important, it is also critical to support them to finish their trades as well.
Senator Walker, I'm sorry. I have Senator Watt, Senator Cash and Senator Nampijinga-Price. They interject. I've got a senator on her feet halfway through asking a question. I can't hear the question because of the interjections. Senator Sterle. Senator Walker, would you begin the question again, please?
While there is no doubt that signing Australian tradies up to apprenticeships is important, it is also critical to support them to finish their trades as well. What evidence is there that the program is working?
Thank you, Senator Walker. Minister Watt.
Thanks, Senator Walker. Well, we've already heard from Australian tradies who love this program, providing the tools they need to succeed early on in their careers. The clean energy stream has a retention rate of 85% after the first year, which is above average for comparable periods. Now, we've seen Senator Nampijinga-Price, as the new Shadow Minister, make her position clear on this program. She seems to see it as wasteful spending. Now, we know the Liberals' secret election review found that young people and multicultural Australians had deserted the party at the last election. I'll give you some free advice. Scrapping a program designed to help young people into apprenticeships to boost housing supply is probably not the way to win over young voters. And promoting someone like Senator Nampijinga-Price is an interesting message to send to all those Indian Australians after her offensive remarks about them only a few months ago. The Liberals never learn, and that's why Australians are leaving them in droves.
Thank you, Minister Watt. Senator Walker, second supplementary.
What else is the Albanese Labor government doing to help Australians get the skills they want for the jobs our nation needs?
Thank you, Senator Walker. Minister Watt.
Thanks, Senator Walker. Well, Labor is proudly the party of free TAFE, because we believe that investing in the future generations of workers in this country is a worthwhile endeavour. Whether it's free TAFE or our key apprenticeship program, the Albanese government is delivering. And the fact that Senator Nampijinga-Price, as the new Shadow Minister, wants to scrap this scheme because, in her words, spending money increases inflation, really shows the lack of depth on the front bench in the coalition.
Senator Henderson.
Madam President, a point of order. Minister Watt knows this to be untrue. It's impugning the reputation of another senator. It's completely untrue.
Resume your seat. Resume your seat. This is twice today the opposition has immediately sprung into a debating point. No, it's not a point of order. Please continue.
Thanks, President. Well, as I've already observed this week, I cannot tell you how happy we are about this new front bench that has emerged under Mr Taylor. And that's because every person the Liberal secret review found to have failed has now been promoted. The bloke who opposed tax cuts and dreamed up free lunches for bosses, he's now the leader of the Liberal Party. The woman who wanted to ban work from home is now his deputy, but she doesn't really get much of a chance to ask a question as the deputy. And the woman who wanted to make Australia great again is already announcing cuts to crucial apprenticeship programs.
Please resume your seat. Senator Henderson.
Madam President, on direct relevance, there is no way that this can be argued that this is directly relevant to the question. It's an absolute outrage.
Senator Henderson.
No.
Senator Henderson. Order. The minister is being relevant to the question. Minister, you have 8 seconds left.
Thanks, President. So every loser who let them lose has been promoted, and again it makes you feel for the people who understood what the secret review said, who has now been demoted.
Thank you. Minister Wong.
Thank you. And on that note, I ask that further questions be placed on notice.